stood at his post, watching the crowd gather in the plaza below. His rifle rested against his shoulder, his eyes scanning the faces of thousands who had come to see their queen. The sun blazed down on the colonial world of three, making the armor plates on his chest uncomfortably hot. He didn't move. Good soldiers didn't complain about heat. Around him, the other human guards maintained their positions. They were the outer ring, the last line of defense that nobody really expected to need. The real security came from the warriors who stood closer to the Queen's platform. Those silver-skinned aliens could read minds, sense danger before it happened, move faster than any human could blink. Humans were just there for show, to prove the Empire trusted all its species. Knew better, humans were there because they were expandable. Commander's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Stay sharp, something feels wrong." Trusted, the old soldier had fought in the war, back when humanity still believed they could win against the Empire. He had survived when billions hadn't. If sensed trouble, there was trouble. The Queen emerged onto the platform and the crowd fell silent. Had seen pictures of Queen, but images didn't capture the reality of her presence. She was tall, taller than most humans, with skin like polished silver that seemed to glow in the sunlight. Her eyes were violet, bright and strange. She wore robes that shifted colors as she moved, and her expression was calm, almost empty. They didn't show emotion the way humans did. They thought feelings made you weak. The Queen began to speak. Her voice carried across the plaza without amplification, smooth and clear. She talked about unity and progress, about the strength of the Empire. Standard ceremony talk. Had heard it before during other royal visits. He kept scanning the crowd, watching for anything unusual. That was when he felt it, a strange pressure in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The guards suddenly went rigid, all of them at the same moment. They stood frozen like statues, their violet eyes wide and confused. Something was wrong with their telepathy. His hand tightened on his rifle. "Commander, the guards are down." "I see it," snapped. "Psionic dampening field, all human units combat ready." The crowd started to panic. People pushed and shoved, sensing danger even if they didn't understand it. Ignored them, his training taking over. He searched for the threat, for whoever had activated that dampening field. Then he saw them, 3 figures on a rooftop, 200 meters away. They wore black combat suits and carried weapons that gleamed with dangerous energy. One of them raised a launcher, aiming it directly at the Queen's platform. Didn't think. His body moved before his mind finished processing what he saw. He jumped from his post and ran. His boots pounded against the stone plaza as he sprinted toward the Queen. Behind him, other human guards were shouting, trying to organize a response. Ahead of him, the guards stood useless, their telepathic senses blinded by whatever field the attackers had deployed. The Queen turned, her violet eyes meeting his for just a moment. She looked confused, not understanding why a human soldier was running toward her. She didn't see the plasma charges that had just been fired from the rooftop, 3 balls of superheated energy arcing through the air toward her position. Covered the last 10 meters in a desperate sprint. He slammed into the Queen, his arms wrapping around her as he dragged her off the platform. They hit the ground hard just as the plasma charges struck where she had been standing. The explosion was deafening. Heat washed over them and felt something punch into his back like a giant fist. Pain bloomed across his shoulders and spine. He kept his body over the Queen's, shielding her from the debris raining down around them. Pieces of the platform, still burning, clattered against his armor. Something sharp cut through his shoulder guard, and he felt hot blood running down his arm. The world seemed to slow down. He could hear his own heartbeat, loud and fast. He could feel the Queen beneath him, surprisingly solid despite her elegant appearance. Most of all, he could feel the pain spreading through his back, hot and terrible. "Stay down," he managed to say. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. More explosions ripped through the plaza. The attackers had brought more than one weapon. Screams filled the air as civilians ran for cover, heard the crack of rifle fire as the human guards finally engaged the attackers. He wanted to help them, wanted to fight, but his duty was clear. Protect the Queen. Nothing else mattered. The Queen moved beneath him. He felt her hands on his chest, pushing at him. "You're injured," she said. Her voice was different now, not calm and distant. Something almost like emotion colored her words. "You're bleeding." "Doesn't matter," said through gritted teeth. "Are you hurt?" "No, you saved me." The explosion stopped. The gunfire faded. Heard shouting orders, heard the sound of medical teams arriving. The dampening field must have dropped because the guards suddenly moved again, rushing to surround the Queen's position. Rough hands grabbed, trying to pull him away. He resisted automatically, his body still locked in protection mode. "Let them," the Queen said, and this time her voice carried command. "Let them help you." Finally allowed himself to be rolled off her. The sky above was very blue, he noticed. Funny that he'd never really looked at it before. His back felt like it was on fire, and his vision was starting to blur at the edges. Medical technicians swarmed over him. He heard them talking in urgent voices, heard words like shrapnel and blood loss. None of it seemed real. What seemed real was the Queen, standing now, her silver face staring down at him with an expression he couldn't read. She knelt beside him, ignoring the protests of her guards. Her hand touched his chest, right over his heart. The touch was cool, gentle. "Why?" she asked. "You didn't know me. You had no reason to risk your life." Tried to focus on her face. It was getting harder to keep his eyes open. "You're my Queen," he said simply. "That's reason enough." He saw something change in her expression. Something shifted behind those violet eyes, like a door opening in a dark room. She leaned closer, her hand still pressed against his chest. "What is your name, human?" He whispered. She repeated, as if testing the sound of it. Then she said something that made the entire plaza fall silent. "This one stays with me. No one touches him. He is under my personal protection." The guards looked shocked. The medical teams froze. Even through his pain, understood that something impossible had just happened. Queens didn't give personal protection to anyone, especially not to common soldiers, and definitely not to humans. The Queen stood, her robes settling around her like liquid metal. She looked at her guards, her advisors, all the important who surrounded her. Her voice was steel. "You failed to protect me. Your vaunted telepathy made you weak when it was taken away. This human, who cannot read minds, who has no special powers, saw the danger and acted while you stood frozen. I will not forget that." She looked down at one more time. "Nor will I forget him." As the medical team finally began working on his injuries, as the pain medication started to cloud his thoughts, heard the crowd murmuring. He heard the whispers starting, the rumors that would spread across the galaxy. The Queen had claimed a human. The Queen had shown favoritism. The Queen had done something that hadn't been done in 1,000 years. He closed his eyes, letting the darkness take him. His last thought before unconsciousness was simple and clear. He had done his duty. Whatever came next didn't matter. He had saved her. That was enough. But for Queen, standing over the body of the human who had thrown himself between her and death, it was only the beginning. Woke in a room that cost more than his entire military salary for 10 years. The ceiling was decorated with swirling patterns that seemed to move when he looked at them. The bed beneath him was softer than anything he had ever felt. For a confused moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then his back reminded him this was real. Pain shot through his shoulders when he tried to sit up. His whole body ached, but it was a distant ache, managed by whatever medicine they had given him. "You should not move yet." The voice came from the corner of the room. An old human man sat in a chair, watching him with dark, careful eyes. He wore formal robes that marked him as someone important in the court. "Where am I?" asked. "The Imperial Palace, the Queen's personal medical wing." The old man stood and moved closer. I am counselor. I have served the court for 30 years. You are the human who did something very foolish and very brave. Tried to process this. The imperial palace was on Avalon Prime, the heart of the empire. He had been on 3. How long was I unconscious? 3 days. They brought you here on the Queen's ship. She refused to leave you behind. Sat on the edge of the bed, his expression serious. Do you understand what you have done? I saved the Queen's life. You did more than that. You made her feel something. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. They are telepathic. When you threw yourself on top of her when you were bleeding and dying, she was touching your mind. She felt everything you felt, your fear, your determination, your willingness to die for her. No has ever felt emotions that strong. It changed her. Didn't know what to say to that. The Queen has visited you every day, continued. She sits in this room and watches you sleep. She asks the doctors questions about human biology, about pain, about healing. She wants to understand you. That is dangerous for both of you. Why? Because the nobility sees emotion as weakness. If the Queen becomes too interested in human feelings, they will say she is unfit to rule. And if she falls, you fall with her. Before could respond, the door opened. Queen entered and immediately bowed and left, closing the door behind him. The Queen stood there for a moment, just looking at. You are awake, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Your Majesty. She moved closer, her robes making soft sounds as she walked. In the gentle light of the room, her silver skin seemed to glow. How do you feel? Better, thank you. You almost died. She said it simply as a fact. The shrapnel punctured your lung. You lost half your blood. The doctors said another 30 seconds and you would have been beyond saving. Didn't know how to respond to that. The Queen sat in the chair had used. I have been thinking about what you said before you lost consciousness. You said I was your queen and that was reason enough. I do not understand that. It's simple, Your Majesty. You rule the empire. That makes you worth protecting. But I have done nothing to earn your loyalty. Your species fought against mine. We conquered you. We destroyed your worlds. Why would you die for me? Thought about how to explain. They were logical. They didn't understand faith or loyalty that wasn't based on calculation. Humans need something to believe in, he said slowly. Something bigger than ourselves. For some people, it's a god. For some, it's a cause. For soldiers like me, it's duty. You represent order. You represent stability. When I see you, I see the idea that the galaxy has structure and meaning. That's worth protecting. She leaned forward, her violet eyes intense. But you did not know me. You had never seen my face before that day. How can you die for an idea? Because ideas are the only things that last, said. People die. Empires fall. But the idea of something worth dying for that survives. That's what makes us human, I think. We can believe in things we've never touched. The Queen was silent for a long time. Then she reached out and took his hand. The touch startled him. Didn't casually touch others, especially not their inferiors. Her fingers were cool, smooth, stronger than they looked. I have lived for 150 years, she said quietly. I have ruled for 70 of those years. In all that time, I have never understood why my people worship me. I was born to rule. My genetics were designed for it. My education prepared me for it. But I have never felt the devotion they claim to have. It is something they tell me exists, but I cannot see it or touch it. She squeezed his hand gently. But you, when I touched your mind in that moment, I felt it. I felt what it means to believe in something so much that you would die for it. For the first time in my life, I understood what my people supposedly feel for me, and I want to understand more. Felt uncomfortable with how intensely she was looking at him. What do you want from me, Your Majesty? Teach me, she said simply. Teach me about these human emotions, about loyalty and faith and sacrifice. I want to understand what I felt in your mind. Over the following weeks, a strange routine developed. Every day, the Queen would visit his room. At first, she asked simple questions. Why do humans cry? Why do they create art about sadness? Why do they tell stories about heroes who die? Tried his best to answer, though explaining emotions to someone who had never really felt them was harder than any military training he had done. He told her about his sister, how she had cried when he joined the military. He told her about Commander, who had fought in a war he knew he couldn't win because giving up felt worse than dying. He told her about human history, about the millions of soldiers throughout time who had died for flags and kings and ideas they believed in. The Queen listened to everything. She asked questions that showed she was really thinking about his answers. Slowly, began to see changes in her. Small things. The way her eyes would soften when he told her sad stories. The way her voice would warm when she talked about things that interested her. Other people noticed too. A young woman named was assigned to serve him. She brought his meals and helped him with tasks his injured body couldn't manage. She was quiet and efficient, but one day she whispered to him, "Be careful. The court is talking. They say the Queen is becoming too attached to you." That same day received another visitor. She was a woman, tall and beautiful, with silver skin even more luminous than the Queen's. She introduced herself as Princess, the Queen's cousin. "So you are the human everyone is talking about," said, looking at him like he was an interesting insect. "My cousin spends more time with you than she spends governing the empire. Some are beginning to wonder if she still has the proper mindset to rule." "I don't control what the Queen does," said carefully. "No, but you influence her. She is learning human emotions from you. Emotions make leaders weak. They cloud judgment. They cause mistakes." His eyes were cold. "If my cousin continues down this path, the nobility will lose faith in her. And if that happens, someone else will need to take the throne." After she left, felt troubled. He mentioned the visit to the Queen during her next visit. Her reaction surprised him. Her expression hardened, and for a moment he saw anger flash across her face. Real, genuine anger. "Has always wanted my throne," the Queen said. "She believes the old ways are best, pure logic, pure telepathy. No emotion, no weakness. She sees my interest in you as a flaw she can exploit." "Maybe she's right," said quietly. "Maybe you shouldn't be spending so much time with me." The Queen stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Avalon Prime stretched to the horizon, a gleaming testament to civilization. "For 70 years I have ruled according to pure logic. I have made no mistakes. I have shown no favoritism. I have been exactly what a queen should be. And in all those years I have never felt like I understood my own empire." She turned back to him. "Then you ran into plasma fire to save me. You did something completely illogical, completely emotional, and completely human. And in that moment I felt more alive than I had in a century. So no, I will not stop spending time with you. Whatever the court thinks, whatever plans, I need to understand this. I need to understand you." That night couldn't sleep. He thought about's warning. He thought about Princess' cold eyes. He thought about the Queen's loneliness, hidden behind a century of perfect rule. He had saved her life. But now, somehow, she was trying to save something in herself. And he didn't know if he was helping her or leading her toward disaster. 3 months after the attack, was finally cleared to leave the medical wing. His back had healed, though the doctors said the scars would stay forever. He didn't mind. Scars were proof you had survived something. The Queen had given him quarters in the palace, a small apartment that was still nicer than anywhere he had ever lived. He tried to settle into a routine, but everything felt strange. He wasn't a patient anymore, but he wasn't exactly a soldier either. He existed in a weird space between roles, waiting for someone to tell him what he was supposed to do now. The answer came in the worst way possible. News reached the palace of an attack on a human colony world. The Void Seekers, the terrorist group that had tried to kill the Queen, had bombed a settlement. 5,000 people died in the explosions. Men, women, children. The images from the attack were horrible. Watched the reports in his quarters, feeling sick. He recognized some of the faces in the survivor interviews. people from his home world, people who might have known his family. The palace erupted in political chaos. Princess called an emergency session of the High Council, wasn't allowed in but told him what was happening, was blaming the queen, saying her weakness toward humans had made the empire vulnerable. She was calling for a vote of no confidence. That evening, Commander visited's quarters. The old soldier looked tired, worried. "It's bad, kid. Has a lot of support. The traditional nobles think the queen has lost her way. They're saying she cares more about humans than about interests." "That's not true," said. "She cares about understanding her people, all her people." "I know, but politics isn't about truth, it's about perception." Sat heavily in a chair. "There's talk of civil war if pushes this. The military is split. Some admirals are loyal to the queen, others think is right. What can we do?" Looked at him seriously. "Stay alive. Stay close to the queen. She trusts you. That might matter before this is over." 2 days later, the queen summoned to her private chambers. He had never been there before. The rooms were surprisingly simple, not as decorated as he expected. She stood by a window, looking out at the city. "They are going to force the vote," she said without turning around. "Has gathered enough support. In 3 days, the High Council will decide if I remain queen." "You'll win," said, trying to sound confident. "You're a good ruler, they must see that." She turned to face him, and he was shocked to see something he had never seen before. Fear, real, human-like fear in her eyes. "I have one option to stop the vote, an old law that hasn't been used in over 1,000 years. The claiming." "What's that?" "A queen who faces a challenge to her rule can choose a champion, someone who represents her judgment, her character, her worthiness to rule. That champion must undergo 3 trials. If the champion succeeds, the queen's authority is absolute and cannot be challenged. If the champion fails—" She didn't finish the sentence. "What happens if they fail?" "The champion dies, and the queen must abdicate." Felt cold. "Who are you going to choose?" The queen walked toward him slowly. "There is only one person in this entire empire who I trust to carry my honor. Only one person who has proven they value my life above their own. Only one person who understands loyalty in a way I am only beginning to comprehend." He understood what she was saying before she said it. "No, Your Majesty, no, I'm just a soldier. I'm not smart enough or strong enough for something like this. Choose an warrior. Choose someone with telepathy and training in." "I choose you." Her voice was soft but firm. "I know what I am asking. The trials are brutal. You may die. But if I must prove my worthiness to rule, I want to prove it through someone who represents what I believe leadership should be. Someone who acts from the heart, not just calculation. Someone who understands that some things are worth dying for." She knelt down, bringing her eyes level with his. "I am not ordering you as your queen. I am asking you as someone who has come to value your friendship more than I can properly express. Will you stand for me? Will you be my champion?" He looked at her, really looked at her. This wasn't the distant, perfect queen from the plaza. This was someone scared and alone, someone who had spent a century being what everyone expected and was now trying to be something real. She needed him, not as a soldier or a servant, but as proof that what she believed in mattered. "Yes," he said, "I'll do it." Relief flooded her face. She stood and took both his hands in hers. "Thank you. Whatever happens, I will not forget this." The next day, the queen called a full assembly of the court. Every noble, every military leader, every important person in the empire gathered in the grand chamber. Stood beside her, wearing formal armor that had helped him put on. His heart pounded so hard he thought everyone must hear it. Princess stood on the opposite side of the chamber, surrounded by her supporters. She looked confident, certain of victory. The queen spoke, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. "I am aware of the challenge to my rule. I am aware that some doubt my judgment. Therefore, I invoke the ancient right of claiming. I will prove my worthiness through a champion." The room erupted in whispers, claiming hadn't been done in living memory for most people there. "I choose human soldier of the Imperial Guard as my champion. Let the trials begin." The queen placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. She spoke words in the ancient language, words that sounded like music and thunder at the same time. He felt something change, something shift inside his mind. It was like a door opening, and suddenly he could feel her presence, a warm consciousness touching the edge of his thoughts. The telepaths in the room gasped. Even Princess looked shocked. "I have bonded with my champion," the queen announced. "His success is mine, his failure is mine, his life is mine, and mine is his. We stand together before the Empire." The bonding was supposed to be ceremonial, learned later, a symbolic gesture, but the queen had done something real, something deep. She had actually opened a mental connection with him, sharing part of her consciousness. No queen had done that with a champion in recorded history. The first trial began the next day. The trial of combat had to face 3 warriors in single combat. If he lost, he died. If he won, he continued to the next trial. The arena was ancient, a circle of stone that had hosted these trials for thousands of years. Thousands of spectators filled the seats, mostly nobles who had come to watch the human fail. Stood in the center of the arena holding a simple sword. He wore light armor. His first opponent entered, a warrior named, who moved like water and struck like lightning. The fight was brutal, was faster, stronger, better trained. Sword rang against blade again and again. He was being pushed back, overwhelmed. He could feel the queen's presence in his mind, not interfering, just there, a warmth in the cold fear of combat. Then something changed. Through the bond, he felt the queen's centuries of watching warriors, her tactical understanding, her awareness of patterns. It flowed into his instincts, not as commands but as intuition. He stopped trying to match speed and instead anticipated where the warrior would strike next. His blade caught across the shoulder, not a killing blow but enough, stepped back and bowed. "You fight well, human, I yield." The second opponent was a massive who fought with brute strength. This fight was different. Used speed and cunning, dancing around powerful strikes, wearing him down. When finally collapsed from exhaustion, he saluted with respect. The third opponent was, and he was the most dangerous. Faster than, smarter than. The fight lasted almost an hour, took cuts on his arms and legs. His muscles screamed. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. The queen had trusted him. Billions of humans were watching, hoping he would prove their worth. Finally made a mistake, a tiny overextension. The blade found his throat, stopping just before it would cut. "Yield," he said. Stared at him for a moment, then dropped his weapon. "I yield. You have earned this victory, champion." The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. Not from the nobles, but from the human servants and workers who had been allowed to watch. Their applause grew louder and louder until even some of them joined in. Stood in the center of the arena, bleeding and exhausted, barely able to hold his sword. He looked up at the royal box where the queen sat. She was standing, her hands pressed against the railing, her eyes bright with something that might have been tears if could cry. She descended to the arena floor, breaking all protocol. She walked to and placed her hands on his shoulders, oblivious to the blood staining her robes. "You have passed the first trial," she said, "but there are 2 more. Rest now. Heal. Whatever comes next, you have already shown more courage than I could have asked for." From her seat above, Princess watched with cold fury. The human had won the first trial, but trials got harder, and she had plans to make sure the next trial would be impossible to survive, had 3 days to recover before the second trial. The queen visited him every evening, sitting beside his medical bed while doctors treated his wounds. They talked about small things, ordinary things. She told him about growing up in the palace, always alone, always watched. He told her about his childhood on a human colony before the war, when the sky was full of ships, and the future felt infinite. On the third night, she held his hand and said, "The next trial is different. It will not hurt your body. It will hurt your mind. I wish I could protect you from it, but the rules are ancient. I cannot interfere." What will happen? They will put you in a telepathic simulation, a false reality designed to break your sense of self. Most champions go mad. Those who survive are never quite the same. Her grip tightened. If this becomes too much, if you feel yourself breaking, you can yield. You can stop. I would rather lose my throne than lose you. He squeezed her hand back. I won't yield. The trial of the mind took place in a chamber deep beneath the palace. Was strapped into a chair surrounded by machines that hummed with strange energy. 20 telepaths formed a circle around him, their combined mental power focused on his mind. The queen stood at the edge of the room. "I will be here when you wake," she said. "Remember that. No matter what you experience, I will be here." Then the world dissolved. Found himself standing in a beautiful house. Sunlight streamed through windows. He heard laughter from another room. He walked toward the sound and saw a woman. She was human, lovely, with kind eyes. She smiled at him. "There you are. Dinner is almost ready." He knew her. The knowledge was suddenly just there in his mind, as solid as memory. This was his wife. They had been married for 10 years. They had a son who was playing in the garden outside. This was his life. This was real. But it wasn't real. Some part of him, deep down, knew this was the simulation, the trial. But the memories felt so solid. He could remember proposing to this woman. He could remember their wedding. He could remember holding their son for the first time. How could all of that be fake? The woman looked concerned. "Are you all right? You look strange." He didn't know what to say. The world shifted. He was older now. His wife was dead. Cancer, his memories told him. He stood at her grave, crying, their son holding his hand. The grief was overwhelming, crushing. It felt absolutely real. The world shifted again. His son was grown, a man with children of his own. They were sitting together and his son said, "Dad, I'm proud of you. You gave me a good life." The world shifted. He was old, dying in a hospital bed. His son was there, holding his hand just as had held his hand at his wife's grave. "It's okay, Dad. You can rest now." And then he died. He felt his consciousness fading, felt the darkness closing in. Terror gripped him as everything he was started to disappear. He woke up young again, standing in the chamber beneath the palace. But was that real? Or was the old age real? Which life was the simulation? He couldn't tell anymore. His sense of identity was fracturing. The telepaths showed him other lives. In one, he never became a soldier. In another, humanity won the war and he was a hero. In a third, he died in the first battle he ever fought. They showed him futures where he betrayed the queen, where she died because he was too slow, where humanity was exterminated because of his failures. Some of the visions were happy. Some were tragic. All of them felt absolutely real while he was in them. He lived years in moments, decades in hours. His identity splintered into 1,000 different versions of himself, each one certain they were the real. Through it all, one thing remained constant, a warm presence in his mind, the bond with the queen. It was like a thread of light in the darkness, always there no matter which life he was living. He focused on that thread. It became his anchor. He started to understand what the trial was testing. It wasn't whether he could resist the false realities. It was whether he could experience them, feel all the emotions, and still maintain his core self. So he stopped fighting. He let himself feel the grief when his fake wife died. He let himself feel the joy when his fake son was born. He felt all of it, every emotion, while still knowing deep down that these were possibilities, not realities. He walked through 10 years of psychological torture in 6 hours, crying and screaming and laughing, feeling everything while breaking nothing. When he finally emerged from the simulation, he collapsed onto the floor. The telepath stepped back, looking disturbed. One of them spoke to the queen. He experienced 10 years of false memories. He knew they were false, but he let himself feel them anyway. He didn't break. He didn't deny the emotions. He just endured. What kind of species trains themselves to feel pain they know isn't real? The queen knelt beside, cradling his head. "Humans tell stories," she said softly. "They watch plays about tragedies that never happened. They read books about people who don't exist. They practice grief for imaginary losses. They have been training for this trial their entire lives." Looked up at her, tears still wet on his face. "Did I pass?" "Yes, you passed." She helped him sit up, supporting his weight. "Rest now. The final trial is tomorrow." "Tomorrow, but I need—" "There is no time. Admiral has moved his fleet into orbit. Princess has declared herself regent protector. They are demanding I surrender the throne or they will attack the palace." Her voice was steady, but he could feel her fear through the bond. "We must finish the trials now today, or everything falls apart." That night the palace was in chaos. Loyalist forces took up defensive positions. Human ships were arriving in the system, responding to calls for help from Sister. The city below was locked down. War was coming. Was taken to a medical bay where doctors worked to clear the drugs from his system, to restore his mental clarity. Commander visited. "Kid, you don't have to do this. The queen can abdicate. We can evacuate her, hide her, keep her safe." "And let win," shook his head. "The queen has shown me what leadership means, real leadership. Not just following traditions and calculations, but caring about your people, understanding them. If she falls, the empire goes back to the old ways. Cold, logical, empty." Gripped his shoulder. "Then finish this. Pass the last trial. Show them what humans are made of." The final trial, the trial of sovereignty, was held in the grand chamber. The entire court was there, including Princess. Outside, fleets prepared for war. Inside stood before the trial masters. They presented him with a scenario. A plague had been released on a colony world by the Void Seekers. It was a bioweapon, specifically designed to be lethal. There was a cure, but not enough of it. The base material to make more could only produce one of two versions. One version would save the citizens on the world. The other would save the humans. Could save one species or the other, but not both. He had to choose, and his choice would be executed immediately. Real people would live or die based on his decision. The citizens on that world numbered 50,000. The humans numbered only 10,000. The logical choice was obvious. Save more lives. Save the... But thought about what the queen had taught him, about what he had learned during these months at her side. Leadership wasn't just about calculations. It was about what you valued, what you believed in. He spoke clearly, his voice carrying through the chamber. "I choose neither. Split the base material in half. Give half to each cure version. Let the doctors on both sides do their best with what they have. Some of both species will die, but no one will die because I declared their species less worthy of life." Silence fell over the chamber. Then Princess laughed, a cold sound. "The fool has failed. The correct answer was to save the... They are more numerous, more valuable to the empire. He has chosen sentiment over logic." But the queen stood. Her voice rang out with absolute authority. "The trial is past." "He failed," protested. "He chose wrong." "He chose perfectly." The queen descended from her throne. "This is a trial of sovereignty, of leadership. A true leader does not play mathematics with the lives of their subjects. A true leader values all their people equally, even when it costs more. This human understands what it means to rule better than anyone in this court." She stood beside, placing her hand on his shoulder. "The trials are complete. My champion has proven my worthiness through his courage, his strength of mind, and his moral clarity. I claim victory." Princess' face twisted with rage. "You have proven nothing except that you are weak. Now." The palace shields flickered as Admiral's ships opened fire. Explosions rocked the building. Warning sirens filled the air. The civil war had begun. The queen looked at, I passed your trials, now let me help you win your war. Palace shook as another blast hit the shields, ran through the corridors beside the queen, heading for the command center. Around them, guards rushed to battle stations, preparing for what everyone knew was coming. This wasn't just a challenge to the queen anymore. This was war. The command center was chaos. Officers shouted reports, screens showed Admiral's fleet in orbit, weapons hot and ready. Commander stood at the center, coordinating the defense. He looked up when the Queen entered. Your Majesty, we have loyalist ships engaging's fleet, but we're outnumbered 3-1. The palace shields will hold for maybe an hour. After that, he didn't need to finish. What about the human ships? The Queen asked. They're coming. Your sister has them, said Tu. Every human colony that can spare a ship is sending it, but they're scattered across the Empire. It will take time for them to arrive. Looked at the tactical display. Red dots outnumbered blue dots by a terrifying margin. We need to buy time. Keeps fleet engaged until reinforcements arrive. Easier said than done, muttered. A new voice cut through the noise. Maybe I can help with that. A young man stood in the doorway, wearing the black uniform of the Void Seekers. Guards immediately pointed weapons at him. Wait, the Queen said. I know you. You were in the intelligence reports. Raised his hands. I was a Void Seeker. I'm not anymore. I joined because I believed they wanted to reform the Empire. I didn't know they were working with Princess. I didn't know they were planning genocide. Why should we trust you? Asked. Because I can prove has been funding us from the beginning. Every attack, every bombing, she paid for it all. She wanted to destabilize your rule, looked at the Queen, so she could take the throne and purge human influence from the Empire. He pulled out a data chip. This has everything. Financial records, communication logs, orders for the bioweapon. If you broadcast this, fleet might turn against her. Not all of them support terrorism. The Queen took the chip and handed it to a communications officer. Send it on all channels, every ship, every station, every world. Let the Empire see what is done. Minutes later, the broadcast went out. Evidence was damning. Video of meeting with Void Seeker leaders, audio of her ordering attacks, financial transfers from her personal accounts to terrorist cells. The most shocking revelation. She had approved the bioweapon attack that killed 5,000 humans just to push the Empire toward civil war. In orbit, fleet began to fracture. Some ships stopped firing. Others turned their weapons on their former allies. Confused orders filled the communication channels. But not all of them wavered. Its most loyal followers, the ones who truly believed in supremacy, pressed the attack harder. The palace shields dropped to 50%. They're preparing for a ground assault, said, reading the tactical data. They're going to try to storm the palace and capture the Queen. Felt the bond in his mind pulse with determination. He looked at the Queen. Let me lead the defense. You are not a commander, she said gently. You are a soldier. I'm your champion. I passed your trials by proving I understand what matters. Trust me now. The Queen studied him for a moment, then nodded. Commander has tactical command of ground forces. Looked surprised but didn't argue. What are your orders, kid? Studied the palace layout. Forces will try to breach from 3 points. We don't have enough soldiers to defend all of them, so we don't try, we let them in. That's insane, an officer protested. It's smart, said slowly, seeing the plan. We let them into the palace, then collapse our defense into a smaller perimeter. They'll be spread out, disorganized. We'll be concentrated and fighting on terrain we know. Exactly, said. And while they're busy trying to navigate the palace, our ships hit their landing zones, cut off their retreat. It was a desperate plan, risky, but it was all they had. The enemy landed in force. Thousands of soldiers in combat armor stormed the palace from 3 directions. Forces fell back in apparent panic, abandoning entire sections of the building. The enemy pushed deeper, spreading through the corridors, searching for the queen. Then gave the order, now. Blast doors slammed shut throughout the palace, cutting the enemy force into isolated groups. Soldiers, who knew every secret passage and hidden route, attacked from unexpected angles. What had been an invasion became a maze of deadly ambushes. Fought alongside his soldiers, the bond with the queen giving him an awareness of the entire battlefield that felt almost like telepathy. He knew where his forces were, where the enemy was, how to move units for maximum effect. But the cost was terrible, was hit leading a charge to retake a critical corridor. The old commander went down, blood spreading across his chest, reached him as medical teams arrived. "Told you you were better than me," said, his voice weak. "Finish this, kid, make it count." He died with his hand gripping his arm, the last survivor of the old war finally at rest. Stood rage and grief burning in his chest. He activated his communications. "All human forces, this is, the commander is dead. We're going to make them pay for every meter of ground they've taken. For everyone who died believing in something better. Push them out." The human soldiers, hearing their champion's voice, fought with renewed fury. Meter by meter, corridor by corridor, they drove the invaders back. In space, the first human reinforcements arrived. Colony defense ships, merchant vessels with improvised weapons, even civilian transports willing to ram enemy warships. They weren't powerful individually, but there were hundreds of them. They poured into the system like a swarm, overwhelming remaining forces through sheer numbers and desperate courage. Captain leading a squadron of human fighters broadcast a message. "The Queen claimed one of us. Today we prove humanity keeps its promises. All ships engage." The tide turned. Fleet began to retreat. On the ground, the last enemy soldiers surrendered or fled. The battle for the palace was over. But there was one last thing to finish. Princess had been captured trying to escape on a shuttle. She was brought before the queen in the grand chamber, now and damaged from the fighting. The court was empty except for a few witnesses. The queen stood before her cousin and saw no mercy in her eyes. "You killed thousands to take my throne," the queen said. "You funded terrorists, you started a civil war. Why?" His voice was bitter. "Because you are weak, because you let emotions make you soft, because you chose a human over your own people. You have corrupted everything that should be." "No," the queen said softly. "I have learned what the could be, and you will never understand the difference." Was sentenced to life imprisonment, her titles and power stripped away. Admiral and the other conspirators faced similar fates. The Civil War was over, but the Empire would bear its scars for years. 3 days after the battle, the Queen addressed the Empire. Every world, every species, everyone watched as she spoke from the rebuilt Grand Chamber. "I have passed the ancient trials through my champion. I have defended this throne in blood, and I have learned something that my ancestors forgot. An empire built only on logic and calculation is not an empire worth ruling. We must have structure, yes. We must have order, but we must also have compassion. We must value all our citizens, not just some. From this day forward, humanity and all species in the empire will have equal voice in how we are governed." She announced sweeping reforms. A council where all species could have representatives. Laws protecting the rights of conquered peoples. Investment in human worlds to repair the damage of war and neglect. "This is possible," she said, "because a human soldier showed me what I could not see. That courage without calculation matters. That loyalty without reason exists. That sometimes the right choice is the one that costs more because it values what should not have a price. I have claimed him as my champion. Today I claim all of you as my people, not subjects, people. And together we will build something worth believing in." The response was not universal. Some still believed in the old ways, but many, especially the younger generation, embraced the changes, and humanity, finally treated as equals, rose to meet the challenge. The empire began to transform. A week after her speech, the Queen found in the memorial garden. He was standing before a new monument, one that listed the names of everyone who died in the Civil War. His name was at the top. "I could release you from the bond," she said quietly. "The trials are over. You have earned your freedom." Turned to look at her. Over these months she had changed. She smiled now, really smiled. She cried when she was sad. She laughed when something delighted her. She was still regal, still powerful, but she was also real in a way she hadn't been before. "Do you want me to go?" he asked. She met his eyes. "No, I want you to stay." "Then I stay." She took his hand, that simple human gesture that had once been so strange to her. "I claimed you before the court. I bound you to my fate, but somewhere in these months you claimed me too, and I think that matters more." He squeezed her hand gently. "What happens now?" "Now we rebuild, we heal, we create something new from the ashes of the old." She looked out over the city where construction crews worked to repair the damage, wherein humans worked side by side. "It will not be easy. Change never is, but I believe we can do it. You taught me to believe in things I cannot prove with logic. And you taught me that being different doesn't mean being enemies," said. "That understanding can grow even between species who started as conquerors and conquered." They stood together in the garden as the sun set over Avalon Prime. Around them the Empire was changing. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. In the years to come, historians would debate when exactly the transformation began. Some would point to the reforms, others to the battle, a few to the trials themselves. But those who knew the truth understood it started in a simpler moment. It started when a human soldier ran into plasma fire to save an alien queen he had never met. When he shed his blood for a royal who did not know him. When he chose duty over survival, loyalty over logic, faith over calculation. The humans shed blood for their royals, and the queen claimed him. In that claiming they both found something neither had known they needed: purpose, partnership, and perhaps, though neither would say it aloud for years yet, something even deeper. Visited them that evening, her diplomatic robes dusty from travel. She looked at her brother standing beside the queen, their hands still linked, and smiled knowingly. "The human colonies are celebrating," she told them. "They're calling you the champion of unity. Songs are already being written about you." Groaned, "Please, no songs." The queen laughed, a bright sound that still surprised everyone who heard it. "Too late. I have already commissioned 3 different composers. Your fame is assured, champion." He looked at her with mock severity. "I take back everything nice I said about you." She laughed again and watched in amazement. The distant, perfect queen was gone. In her place was someone warm and real, someone who had learned to feel. As night fell over the palace and the queen walked back inside together, there was much work ahead. Repairs to oversee, treaties to negotiate, a government to reshape. But they would face it together, the queen and her champion, proof that even the widest gap between different peoples could be bridged by understanding, courage, and the willingness to believe in each other. The human had shed blood for their royals. The queen had claimed him. And in doing so, they had changed an empire forever.